Christian McCaffrey was recently traded to the 49ers and is showing the world once again how good he truly is. He is one of, if not, the best running back in the league right now.
McCaffrey going airborne for the Panthers touchdown.
Christian McCaffrey has a hole, has a first down. Christian McCaffrey breaks free.
But honestly, it's not a surprise. McCaffrey's journey to stardom was almost always destined to happen. He couldn't be anything but a star, being the son of a 3-time Super Bowl champion and growing up in a family full of athletes. But despite his natural talent, constant injuries would almost ruin his career. To fully understand the story of Christian McCaffrey, we first have to go to January 30th, 1999, where we see a 3-year-old Christian McCaffrey playing in confetti after his dad had won his second Super Bowl in a row with the Broncos. In that game, Christian's dad, Ed McCaffrey, had 5 receptions for 72 yards. Ed had an NFL career that most players only dream of having, a 3-time Super Bowl champion, his first one being ironically enough with the 49ers, and his last 2 with the Broncos, as well as making the Pro Bowl and becoming one of the Broncos' best receivers of all time. But his dad wouldn't be the only athlete in his family. Christian's mom, Lisa McCaffrey, was also a standout soccer player at Stanford University. His uncle won a national basketball championship with the Duke Blue Devils. His grandpa was an Olympic sprinter. I could go on and on. Almost everyone on both his mom's and dad's side of the family were athletes. But Christian McCaffrey wasn't just born into a family of athletes. He was born into a family of winners, and because of this, Christian had a lot to live up to. Christian McCaffrey was born on June 7th, 1996 in Castle Rock, Colorado. In 2010, he would begin attending Valor Christian High School, where he would join the basketball team, the track team, but most importantly, the football team. And this is where his reign of terror would begin. In high school, McCaffrey would play mainly running back and wide receiver, but later on he would also be the punter as well as the punt returner, the kick returner, and play defense. In only his freshman season, Christian McCaffrey would become the starter for the team by week 3. McCaffrey's breakout game would come in week 7 against Castleview, where he would rush for 188 yards and 5 touchdowns on just 8 carries. Valor Christian would win that game 48-3. As Valor Christian's coach Brent Vesselmeyer put it, all of a sudden he had it and it was like, okay, watch out. Brent Vesselmeyer, by the way, is having a successful coaching career and is currently in the NFL coaching under the Commanders. Anyways, Christian McCaffrey would finish his freshman season with 934 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns, and also had 462 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. That same season, the 10-3 Valor Christian Eagles would face the 12-1 Wheat Ridge Farmers for the Colorado 4A state championship game, and that game would be a huge blowout. Christian McCaffrey would contribute 146 total yards and a touchdown in their 38-8 victory. Christian McCaffrey would win the state championship in just his first year, a huge accomplishment for many people. But for McCaffrey, it wasn't anything special, because he would win it in not just his freshman season, but his sophomore, junior, and senior season. But let's take a step back. Throughout the entirety of his high school career, he accumulated 5,340 rushing yards, 2,505 receiving yards, 315 kick return yards, 571 punt return yards, 84 interception yards, for a total of 8,815 all-purpose yards. McCaffrey also had 86 rushing touchdowns, 47 receiving touchdowns, and 8 special teams touchdowns, for a total of 141 touchdowns. He broke the state record for career total touchdowns, career all-purpose yards, career touchdown receptions, and single-season all-purpose yards, and was also the Gatorade Football Player of the Year for Colorado in 2012 and 2013. If you hadn't realized it by now, this kid was truly special. As a result of his amazing high school career, he was rated a 4-star and was a class of 2014's best player in Colorado and the second best all-purpose back in the nation, only behind Joe Mixon. Christian McCaffrey had offers from schools like Alabama, Ohio State, and many more. Ultimately, he would follow in his father's footsteps and attend Stanford to play for the Cardinal. In 2014, McCaffrey would begin playing for Stanford in his true freshman season, but he would share the field with 3 other players and had little opportunity to do anything. But still, he finished the season with a respectable 300 rushing, 251 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. It wouldn't be until his sophomore season that he would finally get an opportunity and would have an NCAA record-breaking season. In the 2015 season, McCaffrey would accumulate a total of 3,864 all-purpose yards, breaking Barry Sanders' record of 3,250. He would also be ranked second in the nation with 2,019 rushing yards and broke multiple Stanford records. McCaffrey was named an All-American, was the Associated Press College Football Player of the Year, the Pac-12 Player of the Year, and was a contender for the 2015 Heisman Trophy. Unfortunately, he would finish finish in second place, only behind Derrick Henry. He would also help bring the Stanford Cardinal to the Pac-12 championship against USC, where he would get a school record-breaking 461 total yards and was named the MVP of the game. Stanford won that game 41-22. In the 2016 season, he would be less productive, but he would still lead the nation with all-purpose yards and the Pac-12 in rushing yards. McCaffrey's decrease in numbers had been a result of injuries and because he decided to sit out the Sun Bowl to prepare for the NFL draft. This was a very controversial decision and many people did not like it. When Christian McCaffrey declared himself ready for the 2017 draft, he was projected to be selected in the first round by almost everyone, and they would be right.
The Carolina Panthers have selected Christian McCaffrey.
The Carolina Panthers were coming off a disappointing season where they had a record of 6-10 and were the worst team in the NFC South. They had an all-pro quarterback in Cam Newton and needed some weapons to help him, but to say McCaffrey helped the Panthers would be a huge understatement. The Panthers would finish the 2017 season with a record of 11-5 and would secure a spot in the playoffs. In the wildcard game, the Panthers would face their divisional rivals, the New Orleans Saints. McCaffrey in his game had 16 rushing yards and 101 receiving yards and also had a touchdown, but they would fall short in a 26-31 loss. Little did McCaffrey know, this would be the one and only time he would go to the playoffs with the Panthers. Regardless, Christian McCaffrey would have an excellent rookie season with 435 rushing yards, 651 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. Even though McCaffrey was a running back, he didn't have many rushing yards, and this was because he was still the Panthers' number 2 running back, behind Jonathan Stewart, who was averaging 3.4 yards per carry. After the 2017 season, McCaffrey wouldn't be underutilized anymore. Far from it. 2019 would be the year that McCaffrey let the league know that he was elite.
Tons of room to run, makes a move, and gets in the end zone.
2nd and 2, it's number 22, McCaffrey in for a Carolina touchdown.
He accumulated a total of 2,392 yards and 19 touchdowns. He became one of 3 players to ever accomplish 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving in a single season. But even with these insane numbers, the Panthers still finished with a record of 5-11. But let's rewind a bit. It was no doubt McCaffrey earned all those yards and touchdowns because he was elite, but there was another reason why his stats were so good, and it's because he had 287 carries and 116 receptions that year. If that doesn't sound crazy to you, let me put it into perspective. He had the most receptions by any running back ever. He also had the 4th most carries that year and the 2nd most receptions that year. He was a team's receiver and running back at the same time. McCaffrey was being seriously overworked, but everyone just brushed it off, something that would come back to bite him in the near future. McCaffrey's work didn't go unnoticed though. The Panthers would make him the highest paid running back ever with a 4-year $64 million contract at the start of the 2020 season. Obviously, the Panthers trusted McCaffrey and wanted to keep him on the team. Unfortunately, what the Panthers didn't know is that after that contract, a long surge of injuries would begin to plague their star running back. McCaffrey would suffer an ankle sprain in week 2 and a shoulder injury in week 9. He would only play a total of 3 games, and the Panthers ended their season with a record of 5-11. And the 2021 season wouldn't be much better. He would suffer a hamstring injury in week 3 and another ankle injury in week 12. All these injuries began to pile up, and many questions began to surface whether McCaffrey was an injury-prone player, or the more likely situation, if McCaffrey was seriously being overworked. McCaffrey was on pace for 300 carries and 128 receptions that year, which means he would have the 3rd most carries and the 2nd most receptions that season. McCaffrey was stuck in a rut. He was on a team that was slowly killing his body, but never won anything. Fortunately for McCaffrey, he would find hope the next season. McCaffrey would play his first 6 games of the 2022 season with no problems. But on October 20th, a blockbuster trade between the Panthers and the 49ers would shock the whole world. The Panthers were trading their star running back Christian McCaffrey for some of the 49ers draft picks in 2023 and 2024. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey would be going to the team his dad won a Super Bowl with. And when McCaffrey got to the 49ers, he got straight to work. In week 8 versus the Rams, McCaffrey would have 94 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 55 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown, and also 34 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. This game would mark the 49ers' first win of a 10-game winning streak. The 49ers would finish the season with a record of 13-4 and would make a deep playoff run. They would make it all the way to the NFC Championship against the Eagles. Unfortunately, they would lose their starting quarterback in the first drive of the game, and after that, everything fell apart. McCaffrey scored the 49ers' only touchdown in their 31-7 defeat, a disappointing end to a great season. But not all was bad, because McCaffrey was finally on a good NFL team. And in just 1 year, the 49ers had accomplished more than what the Panthers had done in 5 years. McCaffrey was an elite player for the Panthers, no doubt. But now that he's on a winning team and is finding a lot of success, the NFL world has no other option but to acknowledge how good he is. As of 2023, the 49ers are off to a great start with a record of 5-3. Christian McCaffrey has won championships with the Valor Christian Eagles and the Stanford Cardinal. There is no doubt in my mind that McCaffrey can win a Super Bowl, or 3, just like his father.